Welcome to She Built That with Julie Nichols, where I interview female founders about their journeys to business success. Today, my guest is Lynn Zakeri, a therapist in the Chicago area whose passion is to help people figure out what is wrong and help them feel better again. With experience in school settings, private practice, and as a daughter and mother, she has experience working with children, adolescents, adults, and families on issues such as anxiety, depression, family and marital issues, new mom stress, and more. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for having me.
I am so thrilled to have you. Lynn has been coming to my professional moms group meetings since they first started. I think you came to the very first one that I had at Moretti's Italian restaurant in my town of Morton Grove. This was back in like March. I think it was March or April of 2024. So only really like a little more than a year ago. But I remember I feel like you were there at the very beginning. And I feel like it was just you and me for a little bit. And I didn't know if anybody else was going to come. And so I was just so tickled that you were there and that you were there at the very beginning. And I was like, oh my God, maybe this is like going to work. Because I had no idea if anybody was going to show.
I was so excited to see this because for me, this was like a new opportunity. I didn't know these groups existed. I just happened to see that one was offered locally. And I was like, moms who live near me and work, like I was like, check. I want to be there because maybe I'll even make a friend. And
right?
That was really cool. Yeah.
So for those of you listening, if you live in the Chicago area, and it's actually even now starting to grow outside of the Chicago area, the Professional Moms Community Network, it's kind of an umbrella organization of women's groups, particularly in the Chicago suburbs area. And my group is called Skokie Morton Grove Professional Moms. And if you're interested in looking up other groups in the area, I'm going to post in the show notes. I'll post a link for you to learn more if you want to find your local group, mostly in the Chicago area. Now we have one in Denver, one in Tucson, but it was through this group that I met Lynn. And so I'm just so excited. It's I love my group. I love all the women that I meet through it. And Lynn, I believe you're the first guest that is on my show that I've met only through that group. So I'm hoping to feature more women that I've met through that group to come because there's just so many wonderful, kind-hearted, smart, lovely people that I want to help to have more of a voice out there in the world.
I didn't know that was the criteria. So thank you.
Lynn's like, I love it. I love all these compliments. I mean, I'm the same way. But Lynn, would you please give us a description of who you are and what your practice is all about?
Yeah, sure. I'm in private practice. I was alone in my practice for many, many years. I did expand it a bit, which is kind of a longer story with some pros and cons. But I'm in private practice. I've been seeing people in my office, in person, virtually, however they want to be seen. And by this time, I would say I don't really have a niche. It's more so just get to know people, get to hear what they want to work on, where they're struggling. Maybe they don't even know where they're struggling. Talk through some of their clinical stuff and help them figure out ways to start feeling better. That's kind of my tagline, start feeling better.
That's so awesome. And can you give us a little bit of the idea of like the scope of your business? Is it just you? Like how many people are involved? What does that look like?
Right now, it's me and a woman named Ellen and a man named David, and it's the three of us, but it was always me, which is why my name on my website is just my name because that just existed way before my associates did. But between the three of us, we see people with complex trauma, we see people with personality disorders, we see anxiety, depression, eating disorders, people going through divorce, people figuring out if they want to go forward with a marriage, transitions between high school and college. What am I doing with my life? Basically anything at this point. The more complicated, the more we dive in.
And do you see people in person? Is it only online? And in what states?
Yeah. In Illinois, we see people in person if they want to come. There's not a lot of rules here. The rules are whatever you want, wherever your comfort is. A lot of people do hybrid. They might do phone calls, they might do videos, they might come in person. I think as a therapist, it's a lot more fun to be in person, but as a patient, if you can kind of get in the right headspace, doing it virtually can work quite well for you. Just sort of depends on where your vulnerability is and your self-reflection and your um, ability slash capability to be vulnerable and hear some feedback. I can be quote unquote tougher in person because my body language is compassionate and I can try and express that in a video, but also in person I can be even more direct.
Interesting. And
And we're
then,
licensed in a bunch of states. There's probably
oh,
14 states now. Over COVID, in my like really lame procrastination, this is what I do for fun. I got licensed in many, many states. And
that was
then
smart.
Ellen did as well. We just took the exams, did the fingerprints. We were kind of going to town on it. And now, if any of our clients move, we try and get licensed there to kind of keep the continuity and all that.
Oh, wow. That's a really smart way to run your business to be able to then keep those clients and then grow even
If they want
further.
to stay, we want to work with them. If you're getting something out of it, then it's all worth it.
Wonderful. Okay. Now is the time where we're going to go back in time and we're going to go diddly do, diddly do, diddly do. And we are going to talk about where it all began. I want to know before launching your business, what were you doing professionally? And then how did that influence your path towards starting your own business?
Um, your name of your podcast is She Built That. And so I was like, if only I was that intentional, like um, in hindsight, like I think I'm a better therapist sometimes because I help people kind of, you know, think about what they're doing. um, so I was a psych major undergrad. And then I was like, well, I think I'd rather be a social worker than a psychologist because I don't want to take the GREs. Like literally, that was how much thought went into it. But then going to get my master's, I was really really grateful. I was at Jane Addams, where the focus was social welfare and the code of ethics and client centered care. I think that has really shaped me in a big way. I did internships. It was called Cook County Hospital at the time. It's not called that anymore. My first job was working with foster families and the foster children. Um, I have connections now of women in their 40s who I met when they were 7, and they
Wow.
have come back and, you know, one of them may or may not share the same name as you. She's awesome. I always sing the song "Hey Julie" to her. There's a song "Hey
Oh, I
Julie."
love that song. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
totally. So I worked with foster kids and then got my master's and thought it'd be really good to be at a school because what if one day I want to like be married and have kids so I could be on the school set schedule? That's so naive. And I did spend 11 years in the schools. I worked in Chicago public schools for a couple years, worked in Evanston schools for 9 years. I was at one point the lead social worker. I ran the internship program. I loved my job, loved my friends, loved my principals, would tell my principals I'm going to retire here. It was great. And then I became a mom, and you just never know until it's happening. But yeah, I was putting my kids in their home daycare program at 10 weeks old, each of them. And to this day, it kind of messed me up, but it was like this guilt feeling. And I would like go see them during my lunch break and pump my milk and bring it over to them and just kind of try and wear both hats all the time. And um, when my firstborn, who graduates college tomorrow, by the way, so that's how long I've been
Oh
doing
my
this.
God,
When
Mazel
my
Tov. That's so
firstborn
amazing.
when I was pregnant with him, I started seeing a couple clients privately. And I was like, oh, I could buy like a new pair of gym shoes with this money and just kind of did it on the side of it and took insurance plans and just, did it sort of quote unquote for fun, but for extra funds. And realized like, I'm kind of good at this. I like this. It's enjoyable for me. And I felt like it was quality for the people I was seeing in a way that you can't do at the schools. So, added some more clients, and by then I have two kids, and we moved to Skokie, and we buy our house, and I'm out of the townhouse, and there's bigger payments, and there's more to do. As you probably have heard, like, people who work at schools don't make a lot of money. Um, so it didn't hurt to have two jobs. But again, I had like a 4-year old and a 1-year old, and I would race home from school. I had a home office. I would see people in my office. I was working from like 4 to 8 at night, um, just because, like, I could. Definitely a doer, and I would just do it without taking a minute to say, "How am I? How am I doing? Like, is this really hard or what?" um, and my husband was with me the whole time, but it was my job as the wife and mom, not because he put that on me, but because I put that on me. He is actually amazing, 25 years in, and um, really does try to help me out. Sometimes I'm too much of a, like, I'll just do it person, and I've worked on that a great deal, which is why I can talk about it now. But was doing all that, and eventually said, all right, I'm going to leave the school and just do private practice. I'm going to try and make a go of this, try and make it our, like, just the second income, not the third income, and just do it. And left the schools, and became a, like, out of network practice at the same time, so that it could become something I could afford to do. In 2011, maybe. No, probably even earlier, 2009. I don't remember. It was a while ago. My oldest was in going into first grade, I think, when I left fully, but I could be wrong. That might have been part-time. And just sort of did it by myself, was
And
always
what was that
alone.
like? Like going from basically having two full-time jobs, it sounded like, or a full-time job and an extra
Mhm.
part-time. But the it sounded like you were working an insane amount of hours. What was that like as a mom going from that to finally deciding I'm going to leave the school and just do this practice by myself? Was there relief, or was it that you were building your own business so you were just still as busy?
I was just as busy, because then free time looked like gymnastics classes and exploratorium days, and trying to spend some quality time with my child while also building my practice. So I built it pretty quickly. I think a lot of clients have come from word of mouth, and I do think if you're not good, they don't come back. Like, that's kind of how it works in therapy. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no contract. So if people are getting what they're, paying for in their time and their trust and their funds and all of that, then something's working for them, and it's a good thing. It's a good fit. So the free time was still spent, making dinner or going to classes or cleaning up, or however that looked. It still felt very much like a full-time job, but only a full-time job without boundaries.
Hmm. And when you first decided to make that leap, like, did you have any fears about what was going to happen?
Of course. And I remember talking to the head social worker in the school district, like, can I come back if I need to? And they were wonderful. I think they let me take like a leave so that I could come back if I wanted to. And I remember having to like make that decision. Okay, like, the leave is up. Now my safety net's gone, and just sort of trusting it. And, even now, like, the economy, like, you always think, is this going to just disappear? And that's part of, what I do with my clients, is not catastrophizing and, just trusting the process, and things work out how they're supposed to, and just keep doing the best you can.
And then how did you know when it was time to start scaling? How did you know when it was time to add more team members? Did that just come
Yeah.
naturally?
It was one night during the beginning of COVID, and I'm sitting in my garage with my husband, and I'm getting call after call, literally from every person I had seen for, 15 years, saying, "Can I come back?"
Oh, right.
Um,
Okay.
so he's like, "Why don't you just add somebody?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." That's about as much thought went into it. And So I did, and then that person got full, and then I did, and then that person got full, and I had 5 people with me.
Holy
And
cow.
all of a sudden, I'm like, and I'm still seeing like 30 people a week. Like, I'm kidding you not. Like, there was no boundary to your day. You could just start earlier and end later because there's
Right.
no school schedule managing your breaks.
But like,
um,
how did you manage that much stress? Because I mean, I mean it wasn't that long ago. I remember how everybody lost their freaking minds. Like everybody was didn't nobody knew. We'd never gone through this anything like this before. And now you're talking to like 30 people a week. I mean, the load that was on your shoulders. What was that like?
it was I hate to say this, but I even said it then, and I still say it now. It was probably the most impactful thing that's ever happened in my job. The quality of connection and um, the relationships with the people that I've seen some clients for, 10, 15 years. There is a relationship there. I don't care that it's transactional. It's a relationship. And it was like, when do you ever ask your therapist, how are you doing? There's a lot even of that. I also have a home office, and um, I couldn't talk about it too much then. It wasn't really appreciated by a lot of people outside of my world, but I did give some people the option to come in if they wanted. I installed an air circulating vent. I had an air purifier. We sat 6 feet apart. We wore masks. But some of my clients live alone. I was literally the only face they saw in a week, and
Oh,
they would drive here and see a face. And just that human connection, that ability to like have some consistency in their life. If there's one thing, your therapist can provide is someone who's predictable and consistent. And that's what I am. I'm always going to show up. I'm going to, look the same way. I'm going to have the same energy, and it's going to be something you can count on. So we were in the garage, and he says, when you add somebody, I add somebody, and realize I like really don't like being this business owner. Like, I don't. I love my 2 associates that are still with me now. I was bigger. It was not fun. I don't like marketing. I do it. I'm good at it clearly, but I don't enjoy it. And I like being a therapist, and I love Ellen and David. And luckily they love me back, and we're like little family, and we, end all of our texts like love you, and it's amazing. And they're bringing me flowers just as often as I'm, bringing them stuff. But they're like smart, and they're older, and I'm not taking care of them, but it's not fun being responsible for like all of the admin stuff and the extra just junk that comes with it.
how do you deal with that? Like, have you come up with little tricks to kind of manage that better so that like the business side of your business doesn't become as overwhelming?
My husband's a big help to me when I'm like, I'm having that, like, my head's too full feeling. He's like, all right, what do you need me to do? How can I help you? He understands my portal system, and he'll help with some of that stuff with me. He helps me on billing days at the end of the month. Um, I did get a portal, which I didn't have back in the day. I was kind of old school. And I just try and have more breaks. I try and go for, I try and follow my own advice. I
Isn't
don't
that
like
hard?
It's really hard.
It's really
My
hard.
recent post is on burnout, and the one that resonates the most with me is sometimes you just really need to cry. And for
Mhm.
me, that's like a huge reset. Like when I can just let it out and then just deep breath and carry on.
I'd like to talk more about being a woman, owning your own business, starting your own practice. Um, and I'd kind of like to hear from you your thoughts on like, um, has that in your industry um, been, do you feel like there's barriers there as a woman? Do you feel like it's benefited you? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Um, Unfortunately, it's often women who go to therapy. And I think I can have a whole lot of like opinions on that. That's based on, nothing research that I've done in terms of our EQs and ability to be self-reflective and talk about what's going on.
Talk more about EQ. Like, what does that mean? I mean, I know what it means,
Um,
but I would love
yes.
to make sure that
Yeah.
people at home know what
Yeah.
that means.
I lately I've been using the words, the ability to be curious and ability to be self-reflective. And I think those are two really big qualities that can find connection with almost anybody, even when you don't have anything in common or have different opinions. If you can be curious about where they're coming from, and if they're self-reflective on why they're coming from that place, then we can always agree to disagree, but it's going to be done with mutual respect. And so I think there's a lot of women therapists out there. I do have David with me, and his caseload's probably half women. Um, there are some fantastic men in therapy. I love some of them that I see myself, but um, there's I think maybe more of the difficulty is has been for me my age. For a long time, I felt imposter syndrome that I'm the young one and I don't know what the older people are doing, or they were looking at me like I was too young to know.
Hmm.
And now I'm not one of those. I'm one of the older ones. And um, I'm wearing that wisdom so proudly. Like I can figure a lot out pretty quickly now, but I don't know that a lot of people want quote unquote an older therapist. There's a lot of just personal preferences about what you think is a good fit, when the truth is, it's really just about the connection and the relationship.
That's so interesting because it's like what you bring to the table is that you've had so many experiences now in your life. You're a mother, you're a wife, you're a business owner. You have all of these things you've gone through in your life in order to better connect with your clients. But if if there's not that connection, if you don't think up well and you have that like back and forth with a client, it kind of doesn't really matter how much experience you have in your life. It's not going to really work. So,
Exactly.
what advice would you give to somebody who has been thinking about doing talk therapy but is afraid and isn't sure where to start?
It It is really about the relationship between you and your therapist, and it's going at your pace and meeting you where you're at. That's my job. My job is to figure out like, oh, okay, I'm pushing too hard, too fast, or I need to be a bit more challenging. This person's not getting out of me what they're trying to get out of me. I ask a lot of questions to try and figure out how much are you able, not willing, but able to even disclose. Sometimes we haven't done our own personal work to even figure out how to put into words what's underneath a lot of our actions. Um, Call people, look at their websites. That's like I always say, like I've written every word on my website. I've picked out every image. If you like my website, then we would probably be happily dating, and then call me and decide if you want to marry me. Like that's kind of the like the test. And if I'm not the right therapist for you, by all means, don't sign up.
And I think that's the
Move
problem.
on.
I think people have bad experiences with therapists and they think that it's going to be like that with everybody. And so then they just
Yes.
stop going to therapy. And I am, stubborn. And I've definitely had my fair share of therapists where I was like, I don't feel like this is right. And I should probably find somebody else. But it's especially when you're in that headspace of either it's like anxiety or depression and you're just like so like I just need help right now. Just the thought of trying to find somebody new can be so overwhelming that a lot of people just stay with a therapist that they're not happy with.
I think you're right. I was just talking about this with David, that our clients can never feel like they failed at therapy. You know,
Mm.
we I know if a session ended and it was like a little not fantastic. I know
Mm.
that feeling. And so if I know it, you better believe my client knows it. That they were probably walked out of my office like, I don't know if I need this anymore. I it is I always say this, like, it's my responsibility that you leave feeling better every time, and that doesn't mean leaving happy. It just means leaving with more insight, more clarity. Um, I might have been so hard on you and so direct with you because we have that back and forth by now, and I can say, Julie, you said this 3 weeks ago. Tell me what's different this time because I'm not hearing it yet. Where are we? And you're going to go, thank you. You're right. I am boring myself with this repetitiveness. I need to figure this out. Thanks for reflecting that back to me. And it's not easy to hear that stuff, but um, staying with somebody where you feel like you're trying harder to make it work, like as a client, if you're trying harder to make it work with your therapist than they are, please, there's a million of us.
Yes, there are so many options out there, and I'd say like you tell me, what do you suggest? Like if you had a friend and what would you say to them if they were like, I need help finding somebody else? Like where should they go to
Yeah.
look?
So there's some therapists who are more gentle. There's other therapists who are not um, as inquisitive and just think that you get a lot farther by sort of listening, which is fair. Like there's no judgment on any styles. It's knowing yourself and knowing what's too safe and too comfortable that
Mm,
will be your waste of time versus your um, our protective system inside of us sometimes wants to escape the real deal in front of what's happening.
yeah.
Then we're not ready to face what's really going on. So kind of getting a sense of what is that therapist able to do for you, and tell them. If I say Julie, that seemed like you were sounding kind of like you were making a joke about that. You could say Lynn, I wasn't, um, and I don't like it when you say that because I was being serious or whatever. And I, as your therapist, have to be like, thank you, noted. I will now read you differently because I was wrong. And um, our
So
job
don't
as
be afraid
therapists
to
is
give
not our
feedback.
ego in the room. No, our ego has to stay out of the room.
Mm,
Kind of like our emotions do in a way, Julie. Like if you're telling me a really sad story and I'm really sad with you, then you're taking care of me, and that kind of sucks for
mm,
you.
yeah. Can you give us just like a really easy description of like what's the difference between seeing a social worker, a psychologist, a psychiatrist? I think a lot of people just kind of lump all those together and they don't know who to go to.
Okay. A psychiatrist went to medical school. So that's number one, really helpful to know that they're going to have a really much better education on pharmaceuticals and how that plays into your system, if you are interested in any medications, that sort of thing. And also, anybody who went to medical school is probably most likely, I'm not going to say everybody, but most likely to be focused more on the medical diagnostic situation of, where are you falling criteria wise, all of that. I love collaborating with psychiatrists, but I love being the social worker. Psychologists have a different training than social workers do. My social work program was more social welfare based, along with code of ethics and school social work, but um, some other social work master's programs are more clinical based on DSM-5, which is all of your disorders. So worry is not a diagnosis, anxiety is. Sadness is not a diagnosis, depression is. So a DSM is your list of all of your diagnoses, whether you're talking ADHD, whether you're talking bipolar, borderline personality disorder, PTSD, whatever that is. Um, in I guess generically, I would say psychology programs are probably more based on research and diagnostically, where do people fall, that sort of thing. However, a good clinical therapist is going to look at everything. They're going to look at your attachments, theories. They're going to look at your relationships, your support systems, what's gotten you to this point in life so far, what made you this way. Again, how insightful are you about yourself? How open and curious are you about yourself? That sort of thing.
So that's what you are, the licensed clinical social worker and
I'm a social
therapist.
worker. Yes.
Got it.
And very proud to be a social worker. Like, I like wearing that hat. I think I'm glad I'm a social worker.
Awesome. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our time together, and it's been so fascinating learning about your experience. I want to know, looking back, what advice would you give to yourself on day one of starting your practice?
I didn't know that I didn't know I could do a good job. I knew I could get the job done. And
Hmm.
there's a different, I'm a good doer. I'm a good, type A person, and my list is almost always checked
I was
off.
going to say, checking those boxes.
Yes, but to not worry so much about whether or not you're doing a good job and just do the job the best you can and trust that that's enough.
Hmm.
I was probably not able to sit in the moment enough, and was much too focused on the expectations I had for myself to keep
Hmm.
doing.
That's so
Being busy,
interesting.
instead of being real.
I feel like imposter syndrome is so real in entrepreneurship, especially when, very often you're kind of working in a silo and you don't really have anybody but yourself to bounce ideas off of, or you don't have anybody else to kind of tell you whether your ship is going in the right direction. And that's why I was so desperate to get out and network with people. And that's a big reason why I started my group, because it was like, I kind of need a tribe of other business owners that I can relate to and talk to. So whenever somebody is starting up their own thing, I'm always like, you should join my group, or you should join this group or that group, because it's like trying to do it all on your own is, kind of, I feel like it's a little bit of setting yourself up for failure, because you just don't have that support without those groups, without those peers who are going through the same thing as you as a business owner, because it's so lonely.
It is lonely, and also the sense that you can be your own professional self as a business owner and a friend to somebody at the same time, and you don't have to wear one hat or the other. You can be both always.
I love that. That's such a great sentiment right there. And it's true. And I think that I actually feel like people who are able to really strike that good balance are better business owners. Like they're able to, then that comes across to their clients, that comes across to, other professionals that they meet, and they're able to even grow their businesses more by being able to find that balance. So I love that. All right, Lynn, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. Could you tell us, how do people find you online?
So I have my website, lynnzakeri.com, and that's been around since before people had websites, I feel like. But it's still there. And then my college grad as of tomorrow is my social media manager. So I send him all my videos for TikTok and Instagram, and he's slowly getting them on YouTube as well. Um, and you can follow me for quick tips on ways to feel better through Instagram and TikTok too, under my name.
Awesome. Well, I will put all of those links in the show notes so that people can find you if they want to reach out. And I highly recommend that you follow Lynn, especially. I mean, TikTok is my social media of choice. I know I'm probably way too old to be on it, but I disagree with myself on that one. I think it's the most fun. So check it out if you haven't, while we still have it. We'll see if it's still around in a couple months. But Lynn, thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for having me. I was happy to
Yeah.
be here.
And thank you all for listening. This is She Built That with Julie Nichols podcast. I am Julie Nichols. I am the founder of Julie Nichols Marketing. I do marketing for small business. So if you don't know what to do to get people to notice your business, give me a call. You could find me at julienicholsmarketing.com. That's Nichols marketing.com. And we'll see you next time.